Big Papa, uniform 259er, 119er, break. Enemy is unaware of our presence at this time, over. Solid copy. Hitman 2-3, Echo 5, Foxtrot.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Ben Powers coming at you from the Commander's Voice. We're having a really, what I consider, unique episode today because we talk about guys jumping out of airplanes. We talk about battles from the Civil War to Vietnam and to the GWAT, but we have never talked about the chaplains before. And today we've got a really special guest. We've got retired Brigadier General, retired Chaplain Charles Bailey, who his last duty station before he retired in 2015, he was the Deputy Chief of Chaplains for the United States Army. And we're going to have a really interesting conversation about ministering to the troops. So, sir, welcome today.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So we were talking a little bit before the episode started, sir, about your career, and I'd like to just give the folks listening a little bit of background. So if I'm tracking that you were commissioned in the late 70s as a reservist and came on duty in 82. So what was were you in seminary when you decided to commission, or were you already a serving religious leader in the civilian community? How did you decide to join the reserves and start a career in the chaplaincy?
My dad was a World War II veteran. Infantryman in 11th Airborne Division. And so I grew up with that background of huge patriotism and serving the country and serving your part of your citizenship, if you will, and being loyal to your country. And so grew up with that feeling. And so my dad being airborne, got me lathered up to want to be doing some of the same stuff. And so I joined the reserves, like I said, in 77, just to put my foot in the water a little bit and did some trainings and things of this nature as I was going through my seminary work at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. And so when I completed that, I was out in a parish and I was serving local churches there in Texas. And I had a decision point to make. And I said, well, I need to go ahead and apply, just see if they will accept me or not. And make a long story short, without going into detail, they said, sure, can you go in yesterday? And first they wanted to put me in the Navy. And I said, no, I look terrible in white, not going there. And they said, well, I said, can I go to the Marines? As long as I can be airborne. They said, well, yeah, but you got to be in the Navy. I said, no, I'm not going to be on the ship for 6 months. So I said, I'll just wait it out. And I'm not going to the Air Force. I want to go to the Army if possible. So anyway, they said, well, that's a long wait. But they called me 2 weeks later and says, you can go in.
Now, that's fantastic. Now, did you, I'm assuming you had to go to, chaplain officer basic course or whatever the equivalency is. Where was that held at the time? Where did you get your training as a chaplain?
Currently, where I went to the basic course, they call it the basic course. You have the advanced course after that. I went to the basic course at Fort Wadsworth and Fort Monmouth over in New Jersey area. And it was still active at that time. And so that's where our school was at that time. And I went to the basic course there, I believe, right after I got given my credentials in 77. So I went over there as a second lieutenant as I walked in that place. I finished that out. I finished the advanced at Fort Dix, New Jersey. That's where I went to the advanced course. The school had moved to that point back in 88 is when I went to that course. And so then since then, I went to other courses, other places.
Roger that. So did you go to jump school immediately after basic course?
No, I went to basic course. I was still in seminary. So I finished out my seminary work. Then I went active duty after that. And so when I went to Fort Bragg in 82, I requested to go to airborne school, which they approved of. They need airborne chaplains real bad because we come in so much older than a lot of young soldiers because of all our education process, then some were not making it through jump school at that time. So when I came in, they wanted to take some time for me to get physically ready to make sure I could pass it. And so I worked with the National Guard ROTC people there while I was still doing PT. And then they wanted to put me through school at Bragg. And I said, no, I want to go to the Benning. I want to go to the original home of it. So I went in August of 88, 82 in August. I went to Fort Benning.
Outstanding. And then right after that, you reported to Bragg.
Well, I was at Bragg at the time. I was working for the installation level, doing that school, just waiting for a slot to open up. So when the slot opened up, I went in August, got there in June, went in August, And then after that, while I was there, in fact, I was the XO of the company because every other officer wasn't treated out because they couldn't make it. So all of a sudden, I'm the XO of the company. So I did more running than anybody else at that time because I had to run back and forth doing reports and stuff like that, and then do all the PT stuff. So anyway, on my I was at the end of that school. A little short story, real fast. It's kind of a funny one. Is that I was going to be assigned to the 3rd to 325. That's where my slot was to go to when I got out of jump school. So I was there. We were doing the jumps, the jump week, and I was XO. So I was running back and forth, and the company already run toward the airfield to get on the planes, and I had to wait and do the paperwork. And there was this little short, skinny guy there, and another guy said, "Sir, this is Lieutenant Colonel Raines. He just wanted to come by and say hello to you." I said, "Oh, okay." Well, I thought he was a chaplain or something, which I could care less about. I was just trying to pass the course, you know. And so I said, "Oh, good to see you, sir. Glad to have you. Well, I'm in a little hurry right now. I got to go." "Okay, well, good to see you, Chaplain Bailey." I said, "Okay." And I shagged out. And they said, "You know who that was?" I said, "No, I don't know what, some chaplain here locally." He says, "No, that's your future battalion commander." I went, "Oh, man." So anyway, later on we talked about it, and he laughed. He goes, "No, no, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was wanting to see what kind of chaplain I was going to get, and you've been the way you are focused. I knew right away you'll be a good chaplain." I went, "Okay," so I come out okay on that.
That's awesome. So you get back up to Bragg, and you said you went to 2nd Brigade initially, 3rd to the 325, but then you wound up getting a kind of a unique assignment to go down the street and support some of the separate battalions. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I got a call from the division chaplain's office, and they said, "We want you to be reassigned down to the 307th and cover signal and MI and all that group down there." And I said, "Well, I don't want to be reassigned. It's been here a year." They said, "But you're the most mature person we have." That's what they told me verbally. They said, "And you don't need a lot of supervision. You're a self-starter," stuff like that. And they said, "You could be a brigade chaplain right now and from your qualifications." I've been on active duty for a year, so I was kind of complimentary. I said, "Okay, well," I said, "do I have a choice?" They said, "Well, not really. We're just being nice to you." I said, "Okay, got it." Salute and march. So I reported down to the 307th, and I reported over to the 82nd Signal. And then I was assigned to 307th because Signal didn't have a chaplain slot. So I had to cover them equally. So the 2 battalion commanders, Colonel Izzo and Colonel Stump, had a cooperational thing where they both put in for rewards. They put OERs in for me, stuff like that. And then the 82nd Signal gave me a chaplain assistant. 307th gave me a chaplain assistant. So I had representation equally across the board. So every time Signal had a command staff meetings or things of this nature, or 307th had one, I went to both of them unless there was conflict. And so I was always running different PT formations at different times with different units, different companies. And I was running circles basically in myself, but I worked hard. But I co-supported both sides. So all the counselings, all the marriages, funerals, everything going on, I did both for both units. So I really had a large unit as far as numbers together that I had to cover. And then MI threw their stuff in occasionally when they needed some help and some other things like that. But mostly it was those 2 units that I covered.
Right. It sounds like being a brigade chaplain without the supporting battalion chaplains. Like you've got
Correct.
that much personnel to take care of. So the good chaplains I know, and being an airborne chaplain, I'm going to make an assumption, you'd see chaplain out in the field, walking lanes. Sometimes you'd see him on the ranges. So if you're doing that with 3 different battalions, I imagine you met yourself coming and going.
What was so funny about the thing is I'd go to the 307th engineers and I'd hear engineer talk and I understand half what they're talking about. Then I go to the signal and they talk communication stuff. I had no idea what they're talking about. And so I'll just sit there and hear yakety, yakety, yakety from both sides because that was outside of my realm. I didn't have that MOS, so I didn't understand. So I was being educated from both sides. So
No, that's it. 2 things that I'm kind of extrapolating from what you're saying, sir, is that, number one, it almost doesn't matter because soldiers are soldiers and people are people, and
yeah,
you're taking care of people. But on the flip side, it sounds like you had a really great grounding in how the Army works for a chaplain, because you were with an infantry unit and then engineer and signal, and then you get a little bit of that MI. You probably had a better understanding of, combined arms and supporting arms than a lot of chaplains did after their first couple of years in the Army.
Well, I was very ignorant about the supporting battalions and their expertise that they bring into the fight. And I knew of them, and I respected of them, but I didn't understand them necessarily, how it worked. I was still learning that. I was on a learning curve. So getting in there, back to your point, getting in there and working with them directly, my respect just went to the roof, and I became extremely loyal in that sense of fighting and saying, okay, you infantry people, you can pound the ground all you want, but these guys are the ones that keeps you going. And so I was fighting fiercely to represent the units with equal representation as well as religious support and all the resources to come with that.
Oh, that's outstanding. Now, for everybody who's listening, you got a lot of folks who are airborne aficionados. They understand division history, and so you get down to the Signal Battalion in late '82, early '83 timeframe. October '83, we're talking Operation Urgent Fury, which was the President Reagan's response to aggression down in Grenada. So what was life like when you're just doing normal operations and all of a sudden you guys get the call, hey, we're going to go do something real world? Was it initially just another exercise, or did you guys very quickly know something was up?
Well, it has to go with, I guess, human nature in a lot of ways. So when Grenada occurred, and all of a sudden the word went out, and we all had to prepare, and unknown who's going, how many are going, et cetera, except the initial brigades that are supposed to go in and respond, battalions, the infantry, and how many of the support people go with them and stuff like that, and how many forces will follow on after that, et cetera, was all up in the air. It was developing as we went along. And naturally, being all a bunch of airborne hua soldiers, we all wanted to be on the first lift. There's not a plane big enough to take everybody that wanted to go initially, that's for sure. So everybody wanted to go, and so it was exciting. It was the only thing going on at the time that was real world. It was a first war, if you will. We got in, for me especially. But anyway, so everybody wanted to go. So I knew that I would go if it was needed, because I knew the engineers and the signal were broken out into the infantry side of the fence for support, and they had their own elements. So me covering both of them, I was not necessarily a priority to go forward unless there was a gap in chaplain coverage and they needed me as a filler forward to cover multiple, units, whatever it may be, if there's an emergency. And that didn't come. But then as the second brigade went, the third battalion, which left up, it was the first one to went. And as they went, then I was supporting my people of the signal and engineers. I was covering them as they were getting prepped to go, and whatever, I would go get them as they were getting their readiness posture going, get their equipment ready, etc. I'd go and take care of them. I would do their prayers with them. I would do, whatever may be they needed from their religious needs, or just being with them, and they could see me as representation of God in their midst. And so I did all that with them and their families, stuff like this, as they were ready to go. So we were working just pretty much very few hours off at that point as everybody's ramping up to go down to Green Ramp and take off. So I was spending a lot of time with them, making sure that they had a Holy Scripture about whatever type they used. I would have that available. Prayers with them. I would give them whatever it may be, for as maybe a cross or whatever it may be, St. Michael's medals, whatever it may be. I would give all that stuff out, etc. And so all of a sudden, people got really serious about their faith real fast when you see possibly bullets flying. And so all of a sudden, they kind of blew me off other times, but all of a sudden, it's real important. You see the chaplain when you know that you're going into combat. All of a sudden, it was just kind of normal. But anyway, so that's what we did. And then along the way, after initial slot came in, they were starting to pull more support in. And then I got the word that they wanted me to go forward, because they were consolidating signal and engineers at certain locations were in more of a larger groups. And they also had lots of patrols going out and stuff like this. And the Rangers were recovering from their initial slot, and they didn't have a chaplain, oddly enough, with them at that time, that I understand. So they said, you need to go. Every other chaplain needs to stay with their units, but you're the free floater, if you will. So they told the colonel, the colonels says, send your chaplain and your MT, ministry team forward. When I got there, it was the funniest thing. We're on C-130. We're shooted up to jump in. Then all of a sudden it was clear so we could airland, but they were still shooting quite a bit. And I never forget that as they were getting ready to land, the pilot said, I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping. And they said, a ramp's going down. You got to hurry and run off it because I'm keeping on going. I'm gonna keep on going, just take it back off again because I'm not gonna get shot up. So everybody looked at me. It's funny. And everybody says, Chaplain, we'll be okay. I said, yeah, God's with you, blah, blah, blah. And I did all that comforting. And then all of a sudden the ramp goes down and then down. And I was one of the first ones off actually. And you can see the bullets flying off the asphalt. And so everybody that was in front of me tried to back up the ramp. They saw the bullets. So we had to push them out. It was just the funniest moment. And now it's fun. Back then it was stressful. But anyway, we kept pushing them out and we all peeled off to left and right and then dove to the ground. And the plane, once that last guy was off, it just revved the motor up and it took off again. Never did stop. We just ran off as the plane was running. That was my initial hello. And I covered both units there. I went throughout the time there and there'd be patrols going out, stuff like that. And the special operational people were there who had gone in initially, and they had lost some lives. So they didn't have a chaplain, of course. So all of a sudden I'm picked out to cover the special operational people as well. So I had a potpourri of different kind of units that I was covering, and people would give me their watches and wedding rings and give me their some get their whole wallets to me and stuff like that. In case they got killed or shot, they wanted the chaplain to have it. They could trust him. So I had a bag full of stuff, of people's personal belongings. I couldn't say no. So after I do a worship service, they give me their stuff as they go back out patrol. Then later on, try to find them, and they'd come back to me, and I have to hand out their stuff to them. I felt like a pawnbroker of some sort.
That's really interesting.
Really interesting dynamic.
So I had never considered that. You read different stories about, hey, a guy has a premonition, he leaves something valuable with a friend or something. I'd never considered like the chaplain sort of as the main repository. Is that something y'all
I did
trained to expect? Like, hey, you need to be prepared and have an extra duffel bag for this or something?
No, that was a new. First of all, I've been on active duty for a couple of years, so it was a new for me. I didn't realize I would be doing that, and I'm sure they didn't realize they'd be doing it. Give me their stuff either. Everybody was experiencing it for the first time, but that fear of the fragile life of how it is within that setting all of a sudden hits you, and you realize what's important, what's of value to you, and the who is gone, and all of a sudden now it's just getting your work done, getting your job done that you're trained to do, and that's kind of a setting. And so all of a sudden these other priorities and your values of your home and your family and stuff like this always hits you a little bit. And so you want someone to be there to give you that option, to comfort you a little bit and give you a sense of, okay, I'm okay now. I can go forward now because I don't have to worry about it as much because the chaplain is there. It's kind of almost like I'm invincible too, but which is wrong, of course. But
Roger,
that was really interesting. Yeah, really interesting.
So this Signal Chapter podcast, and a lot of folks knowing our battalion's history, that this was a rough time in the battalion's history because we took a fairly significant casualty during this operation. And this is something that we have discussed before recording that I wanted to address. But were you on the island during the friendly fire incident where close air support actually accidentally hit the 2nd Brigade TOC and seriously wounded one of our signal soldiers, Sean Luketina?
I was. I got word of that. I wasn't at the site, of course, because I was covered by the 2nd Brigade, but I was over in the airfield area. That's where my headquarters was, with Colonel Stump and others. And so I got word of that. And so I responded to the medical where he was triaged and brought in. And I responded to that scene, to where I went in as his chaplain, and I was with them and medical people there at that time when they were trying to take care of it.
Oh, Roger that. I'm assuming this had a significant impact on the other signal soldiers on the island. I mean, one of their friends has been.
Oh yeah. It always does. It's always, I don't know. It's kind of it's kind of an extensional type thing, and you kind of think it's someone else, it won't be you, that kind of thing. But when someone you know, or you're there on site, or whichever comes to beat, all of a sudden the finitude comes, hits you again, going, what happens to him can happen to me, or that the emotion of it being a team, and that's your brother in arms, if you will, hit you, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, and all of a sudden it really hits the morale, it hits the sense of finitude, like I said before, and how vulnerable we are, and then how have we be careful what we're doing, etc. And this is not a game; it gets more serious real quickly. And so when he was injured initially, and of course they could recover him, and he died, but when he was initially injured, the word went around of him being shot and him being injured, and that a lot of people came to me at that time. They weren't sure what to ask me, where it may be. They just wanted some comfort. They wanted a sense of that God's in control, if you will. And so I got a lot of people just want to hang around me in a lot of ways, just kind of be with me, that reassurance. So I had to do a lot of maneuvering at that point. I had to go to a lot of locations because the impact of his being injured ripple effect throughout, and the signal, as well as other soldiers too, for that matter, other units. So when a chaplain walks up with their, in my case, a cross on me, because I was a Christian chaplain, and I came walking around maybe, and everybody's, in shock or a little bit in fear or anger, lots of emotions that come out of that. They see me there, and all of a sudden there's a need for me to say the words, or just to be present, to give them reassurance. And it had an effect. I felt I was really making an impact in people's life, that they could be able to keep going on.
Now, were you able to also provide support, coordination, comfort, whatever the terms we're going to use, to Sean's family during this time?
Yes, I was part of the notification of his mother. They were divorced, separated, and so the mother was there at the home, and so me and the company commander went there to speak with her and notify her. Of course, we're in Class A's at the time; that's the requirement. And so she was notified by the company commander, which is their job, to notification. The chaplain is supposed to be just accompanying there, because the reason we do that, just for educational purposes, is that the command side of fence needs to make the declaration of what has happened and what the bad news is. Well, that the normal human reaction is going to be rejection of that individual, because they're to bear bad news. It's just psychological. But the chaplain doesn't need to say those words to them, because they've got to be neutral, in a sense, to be open to minister to the family if needed. So they've got to be off to the side. So what I did is I prepped the company commander, helped the company commander understand of what to say, what not to say, because I've been trained in all that, and it was his first time. And so I would say, do this, she may react this way, etc. We went in, and it was pre-prescribed. And then when he finished it, he stepped away after she had no more questions, and it was my turn. So then I ministered to her and talked about how I was there. And that helped tremendously to know. And she wanted to know about his suffering. She wanted to know about, lots of just open-ended questions that all families would want to know, type thing. And so I talked to her and spoke with her. And then I did memorial service that we did for the unit. I was also in charge of that. In fact, I got a picture of that somewhere I thought I saw a picture of me walking out of the chapel with my stole on and my blouse boots. And we just finished the work, taking his coffin out. And so we were just exiting the chapel. So that was my part of that.
Understood. And that must have been just a really somber time for the battalion. And
it was. Even if you don't know someone personally, like somebody in another company or something like that, it's still one of your own. It's still part of the family of the military. And as you know, there's a unique culture among us that when it happens to one, we're all affected by it, because they're one of us. They were our brother in arms, or sister in arms, in this case, a brother, that walked with us and ran with us and joked with us, etc. And we had each other's back. And so when this occurred, the effect is on everyone there, whether they knew him personally or not. It was personal in one aspect, and more personal to other people who knew him in a much more in-depth way in the unit. And I had to work with them on some counseling afterward to help them get with their grief. So I worked. The ripple effect of even one person takes on a longer and longer range, because I have to work with people who then were grieving for him on a much more personal level than just a unit itself.
Roger that. And this is, to me, this is a really important conversation to have, because through the course of my career, sometimes you talk about folks like, is a chaplain an outdated concept? Or a lot of folks aren't religious anymore. Could we use an MTO slot for a different MOS, for a different capability? But the force multiplier effect of having somebody who's trained and whose mission it is to be that sounding board, to be that counselor, just to be somebody who's listening, it can't be quantified. And this is just a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's not religion necessarily. Religion is just an expression of one's spirituality. And so everyone's spiritual in their own way. Not whether they have a deity or not makes no difference. It's not the point of it. Spirituality is what we are, our values, our core, what we believe in, what we believe beyond ourselves. That's the spirituality. And religion, like I said, is an expression of that. And some do not use the expression by choice of going to be a Baptist, Catholic, whatever it may be, but they choose to be, they're spiritual no matter what. So a chaplain, though being a religious leader in their own right, also is trained, in this case, trained to be able to meet that spiritual need. And that's not only an individual spiritual need, but that's also the whole unit spirituality, in a sense that the very belief systems and the core values and the moral depth of that unit is right intact there. And that's shattered, or that's damaged through stressful and very huge events, or events that happen beyond their control. And so you need someone to objectively can come in there with a subjectively understanding and meet that need in a pluralistic, in a multifaceted way, when nobody else is not trained to do that, nor they have the time or specialization to do it. A lawyer can't do it. A doctor can't do it. It's beyond that. It's not a Band-Aid moment. It's a soul spiritual moment of doubt and fear. And so we work from that, and then the religious aspect is a secondary aspect from that. So back to your point, yes, it's kind of a thing when you break glass and get a chaplain when you need them type thing. But you're surprised how often you have to do that when things are outside of your realm of control. And so people don't want, I guess, just platitudes, and they don't want just simple formulas. They want someone that understands the depth and the seriousness of life, and be able to address those issues with people. And so that's what a chaplain's trained to do.
Roger,
that's my answer.
That's a fantastic answer. That's a great way to go out. So I really appreciate you taking the time to give that
Thank
thought.
you. Thank you. I was honored.
So everybody, this is Ben Powers. This has been the Commander's Voice. Guest today has been Chaplain, Brigadier General retired Charles Bailey, chaplain to the paratroopers. So thank you so much for coming out today, sir.
My pleasure. My honor.